And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan coming to you from the National Weather Service in Alaska region on this Thursday, May 16th, 2024. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I give you in this YouTube broadcast, please go to weather.gov. That is the National Weather Service's online presence. It'll bring you to a map of the continental U.S. with Hawaii and Alaska to the lower left, and then tabs for the various territories. Of note on the map for the continental U.S. on this Thursday afternoon, we have the potential for flash flooding as a result of severe storms. There are severe thunderstorm, tornado watches out across parts of Texas into Louisiana, with flood watches for the potential for flash flooding. Widespread 3 to 6 inches of rain will fall along these training thunderstorms, and locally higher amounts are possible that could result in flash flooding. Up here in Alaska, we're not getting any heavy rains at this time, but we recently had this historic geomagnetic storm with low-latitude auroras. Unfortunately for Alaska, we are at the point in our season where we just have too much daylight, and in many areas, skies were cloudy this past Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, so we missed out on that. But I'll talk about it because it's rather interesting. And then we continue to monitor the lower and upper Yukon rivers, as well as any snowmelt that may come down the Porcupine River and impact areas there along the upper Yukon River around Fort Yukon. It's still looking like now through Memorial Day weekend, temperature's going to remain cooler than normal across the southwest mainland, starting to warm up in the north and eastern mainland, especially along the Alcan border, and then continued wet, especially over the northwest mainland. And another outlook I'll include and talk about is the summertime drought. Looks like it could drought conditions could likely develop over the southern panhandle here over the course of this summer. So looking at a few of the FAA webcams on this Thursday afternoon. Central up there in the east central interior, partly cloudy, 62 degrees. We have some of these cumulus clouds. They're kind of flat topped, but you will note in the next couple of days you'll see more vertical development. So there could actually be a few scattered showers and thunderstorms popping up across areas of the central and eastern interior on Friday and Saturday afternoons. Down across the southwest, we've had a front come inland. Did produce some snow and blowing snow now, mostly cloudy. St. Mary's, mostly cloudy, 39 degrees. And reports are that the river ice finally broke up there at St. Mary's, and we'll continue to monitor that region, the lower Yukon Delta, especially for the potential for ice jams coming up, because it remains a bit uncertain as to how that ice is going to finally break out and move down the lower Yukon system. South side of Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, today seeing cloudy skies, breezy conditions, areas of rain. Akiak on the south side of Kodiak Island, 45 degrees with some light rain and low ceilings. And then Klawak, mostly cloudy this Thursday afternoon. As of mid-afternoon, 54 degrees with some breaks in the cloud cover. And Klawak is one of the areas that may see some drought conditions develop here over the course of the summer. It's just an outlook. But here is a kind of a recap or some highlights of the recent great geomagnetic storm that occurred Friday, Saturday, May 10th into the 11th. And it was an extreme G5 storm event. That's as high as they go. And it's the most intense solar storm and visible auroras we've seen in at least 20 years, and perhaps going all the way back to March 1989. I remember that particular display as very impressive, with auroras going way far south. And what makes that similar, this most recent event, to the March 1989 event, is that auroras were visible very far south into Florida. Key West recorded images of aurora there, the Bahamas, and even Puerto Rico. So these are rare occurrences for them to get as far south as Puerto Rico. There's only been a few times maybe in the last 150 years. And the Alaska aurora viewing season, well, we have just too much daylight now. Darker skies, nighttime skies will return mid to late August, so that'll be that time frame where we are able to see them again. But looking at the latest on the river breakup scenario, we still are watching this lower portion of the Yukon River Basin, especially heading out toward the Yukon Delta. There's still ice there in place. Hopefully it just goes out nice and easy. But as I mentioned, St. Mary's reported the river breaking up there today. And then the other area we're watching, here's the upper Porcupine. There's still a lot of snow cover and ice up there in Canada. And if that releases and melts off with the given warmer temperatures we're anticipating in this region now into next weekend, Memorial Day weekend, there's a likelihood that some heavier snowmelt runoff could come down the Porcupine and impact communities around Fort Yukon. So just keep an eye on the forecast. And this is just kind of a heads up to prepare you for that potential. And then the rivers of the north, especially the North Slope, they have yet to release ice. We'll be keeping a close eye on the Sag River here simply because of the problems with the erosion we had along the highway last year when that finally melted off. And fire weather season. We're in the fire weather season as well, and we find the grass aggregate is the most important as far as early in the season for sustaining fire starts. And it is running higher here up through the Tanana Valley in the areas of the Yukon Flats, as would be expected. There have been a few fires reported there, and we are going to have some scattered showers and thunderstorms popping up Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoon. So even though it's not a high likelihood there could be fire starts from that, it is just the beginning stages of the fire season here in Alaska. And then finally, the drought outlook. Continental U.S. shows areas of the southern Rockies, West Texas, up into southwest areas of Kansas, and then the northern Rockies, parts especially up there toward western Montana, Idaho. But here in Alaska, there's a potential just in the category for some drought conditions developing in the southern part of the Panhandle around Klawak, Craig, on over toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla. So what indication is, at least the current outlook is that expect at times drier and warmer conditions than usual here in the Panhandle, and some things support that coming up in the near trends here. I'll show you in a moment. But on the satellite imagery, we are watching few systems. There's a secondary low that's formed. We had that front come inland. This is the remnants of that front. Secondary low here pushing up just south of Kodiak Island. That low is going to work its way east and then just kind of weaken Friday into early Saturday. Next low is coming in off the Asia mainland along the Kamchatka coast. That low is going to track something southeastward like this and then cross the Alaska Peninsula on Saturday morning. That'll be the next weather maker that moves up into the Gulf and brings areas of some rain initially here in the west side around Kodiak Island, lower Cook Inlet, and then eventually pushes it up into the Panhandle Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. And as we go, here's the situation. There's that secondary weaker low that developed on the occluded front that pushed inland. There's a little colder air up here in eastern Russia. It's not going to advance much, but this is the next low that's dropping southeastward. We have a thermal trough just because of the warmer temperatures here, helping to feed those popcorn-type showers and thunderstorms that flare up in the afternoon and evening hours this time of year from northwest Canada into the east-central interior. Later tonight, early Friday, this low is a weak one. It's just working its way east-southeastward. Most of the rain associated with it will stay out over the Gulf by the time we get into Friday. Friday afternoon up here, long north of the Alaska Range, 40-mile gold country, hills around Fairbanks, Yukon Flats, could see some scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms pop up with the afternoon, evening heating. And then here comes the next low. Not especially strong, but it will get better organized as it drops southeastward. There's a secondary piece of energy, and the two of those are going to kind of combine just south of the Alaska Peninsula later on Saturday morning. And so by Saturday afternoon, we have this double barrel system, the original low here kind of back toward Bristol Bay, but then the secondary low here on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. And that feature then is going to become the main system that works its way east-northeastward across the Gulf. And that'll spread some more rain and areas of rain, along with breezy conditions along the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle by the time we get into Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening. So temperatures Friday morning, mild in the upper 30s to mid 40s along the Panhandle. Temperatures even say Copper River Basin staying at just above freezing, 40-ish or so in Anchorage. Daytime highs should get back up into the 50s, an isolated 60-degree reading, not out of the question here in the southern Panhandle, places like Klawak. Back here could be 62 at Glen Allen, 50s in Anchorage Bowl, and then temperatures again above freezing now across south central in most areas, with the exception of maybe a couple of cold hollers up there. But down here through the Panhandle, lows upper 30s to low 40s, and then daytime highs 50s to maybe near 60 in the southern Panhandle, 50s with some 60s, as warm as 64 there, Glen Allen. And then across the central northern areas of the mainland, temperatures stay above freezing along the middle upper Yukon River into the Yukon Flats, 40-ish for lows at Fort Yukon and Fairbanks. Temperatures getting well into the 60s here over the weekend, starting Friday afternoon, mid, even some upper 60s, say 68 there at Eagle. That's what's going to help melt that snow in the upper Porcupine River, the snow and ice that remains in this region. So that's why there's concern as that runoff water comes down the Porcupine. That could cause notable river rises here in areas of the Yukon Flats. But temperatures should be back up around freezing along the Arctic coast and into the north side of the Seward Peninsula, though it may stay just below freezing around Wales and Teller. And then for Saturday morning, we expect lows again, generally just above freezing across the middle upper Yukon, Tanana Valley. Temperatures could dip into the upper teens to near 20 along the northwest Arctic coast, western part of the North Slope. And then temperatures on Saturday afternoon, we're going to start to see some 60s advancing back a little toward the west, Tanana, maybe up toward Bettles, getting into the lower 60s for highs, definitely 60s along the Alcan border. And even temperatures getting back up around or just above freezing, maybe upwards of 44, 45 there at Nome. And then across the southwest interior, temperatures tonight will dip below freezing around Bethel's and the lower Yukon basin, above freezing in the 30s across the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. Friday afternoon should get above 50 at McGrath, but still 40s down here throughout, say, St. Mary's and Bethel on up to Anvik and Aniak. Down along the Alaska Peninsula, 40s, and again, some cloud cover lingering there. And then for Saturday morning, temperatures should be generally above freezing with the exception of maybe along just the outer Yukon Delta and back towards St. Lawrence Island there at Savunga, 25. And then Saturday afternoon, temperatures should try to get up here finally in the 40s, and that should help to really break up and melt off some of this ice that remains there in that lower portion of the Yukon Delta on the Yukon River. And then temperatures elsewhere trailing out along the Alaska Peninsula and into the eastern Aleutians, highs in the mid to maybe upper 40s with that low splitting and coming across the Alaska Peninsula as we go through the afternoon. So here is the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook as we get into Memorial Day weekend. Temperatures are going to stay cooler than normal right over the lower Yukon Delta, this region here, YK Delta, into the Alaska Peninsula. But look for temperatures to warm with the ridging into northern areas and eastern areas of the mainland, especially along the North Slope and Yukon Flats. And as we get in toward the end of the month, from Memorial Day weekend to the end of the month, we're starting to see that warming take hold and kind of build across the areas of the Panhandle up into the northeastern mainland, whereas it stays cooler than normal. You guessed it, same old place it's been doing so, right here over the southwest mainland. And precipitation-wise, May 22nd through the 26th, with frontal systems and things coming onshore, we expect precipitation to average above normal around Norton Sound, especially the Seward Peninsula, on up through Kotzebue and around Point Hope to Cape Lisburne. And precipitation averaging below normal with a little warmer and drier conditions expected to set up here as we get into Memorial Day weekend over the Panhandle. And as we go to the end of the month, still those drier conditions correlating with some sort of ridging in northwest Canada nudging up along the Alcan border, where still precipitation could average a bit above normal along the west coast here as we head toward the end of May.